This is Dr. Jerome Corsi, and today it's Friday. It's January 19th, 2024. Thank you for joining us on thetruthcentral.com. We're doing podcasts every weekday. You can follow me on X. It's at Corsi Jerome 1, at CORSIJEROME 1, all together, all small letters. And Substack at JeromeCorsiPhD.substack.com. Again, my name and PhD all together. You can find that on JeromeCorsiPhD.substack.com. First story today, Davos is going on. It's about to come to an end, thank goodness, but this Davos is always a trying event. We get all the world elite there to tell us how we're going to live. I'm sure people are pretty much sick of it. And the Melei speech, the president of Argentina, was, I think, one of the breath of fresh air, because he was basically telling the global elite that they're the ones who are the problem. And this whole conference this year is on theme rebuilding trust. So the Davos people know they're losing. They know they're being exposed for what they are, which is a bunch of oligarchs who want to have all the world's resources to themselves while the rest of us starve, or get rid of the rest of us because they like depopulation. So the president of Heritage Foundation also yesterday told the Davos crowd exactly the truth about how ridiculous they were. And we're going to play the clip. It lasts about 3 minutes, but it's a very, very good clip. And so, Chris, if you go ahead and play it, we'll listen to it.
It's laughable that you would, or anyone would, describe Davos as protecting liberal democracy. It's equally,
standing up for it.
It's equally laughable to use the word dictatorship at Davos and aim that at President Trump. In fact, I think that's absurd. But I'm going to step aside from that constructive criticism and instead answer your question.
Yep.
And I'm going to be substantive here. President Trump, if he's the next president, for that matter, I think whoever the next conservative president is going to take on the power of the elites, which I mentioned earlier. But the thing that I want to drive home here, the very reason that I'm here at Davos, is to explain to many people in this room and who are watching, with all due respect, nothing personal, but that you're part of the problem. Political elites tell the average people on 3 or 4 or 5 issues that the reality is X, when in fact reality is Y. Take immigration. Elites tell us that open borders and even illegal immigration are okay. The average person tells us in the United States that both rob them of the American way of life. They're right. President Trump will take that on behalf of the average American. Elites also tell us that public safety isn't a problem in big American cities. Just travel to New York or Washington or Dallas, Texas. The average person will tell you that the lack of public safety damages not just the American way of life, but their life. President Trump will take that on. Thirdly, I guess the favorite at the World Economic Forum is climate change. Elites tell us that we have this existential crisis with so-called climate change, so much so that climate alarmism is probably the greatest cause for mental health crisis in the world. The solutions, the average person know, based on climate change are far worse and more harmful and cost more human lives, especially in Europe during the time that you need heating, than do the problem and the problems themselves. Fourth, 2 more here, Robin. The fourth, China. The number one adversary, not just to the United States, but to free people on planet Earth. Not only do we at Davos not say that, we give the Chinese Communist Party a platform. Count on President Trump ending that nonsense. And fifth, as we sit here, another supranational organization, the World Health Organization, is discussing foisting gender ideology upon the global South. These are practices that are under review, if not being rejected, by countries in Northern Europe. The new president, especially if it's President Trump, will, as you like to say, trust the science. He will understand the basic biological reality of manhood and womanhood. And do you know why? Not because of retribution, not because he's a dictator, but because he has the power of the American people behind him. And it's connected to Senator Portman's excellent point that in addition to needing a vigorous executive, we look forward to having the popular will inform both the House and Senate in 2025 to pass laws on all of those issues and many others. Ultimately, Robin, I think President Trump, if in fact he wins a second term, is going to be inspired by the wise words of Javier Milei, who said that he was in power not to guide sheep, but to awaken lions. That's what the average American and the average free person on planet Earth wants out of leaders.
That was a very good statement, and I think it sums up a lot of the frustration we're all feeling, people in America are feeling around the globe, about the insanity of how things are going. That you find wars breaking out now in the Middle East, and Ukraine continuing, Taiwan on the brink of being invaded. You've got Iran and Pakistan now having a border clash. It's the world is like at the beginning of World War III. And we're going to report here today on a variety of things in terms of the democratic cities and how they look, and what the condition they're in. This insanity that we're going through right now of this critical theory, this neo-Marxism, can only destroy. And the book I've written on this, which I think is really important to read, The Truth About Neo-Marxism, Cultural Maoism, and Anarchy. We're going through the neo-Marxists are now running a cultural revolution, just like Mao did in China, very destructive. If you don't believe their insanity, if you don't think that your gender is different than your sex, if you deny that there are men and women, there's anything in between, and this extreme group thinks that animal life is the same as human life, and they want to have more animal rights than you have human rights. It's anti-human. It leads to anarchy, and we're headed into anarchy. Our cities are in disarray. They're not safe. They're being jammed full of immigrants with no planning. No one has any idea where these people are going to go or how they're going to survive. It's actually cruelty to bring them into the country the way the Democrats are doing it. But every single idea the Democrats have is destructive. And I think the Democratic Party is on a train to hell, basically. And I don't think the American people want to go with them. That's not a ride the American people want to take. Chris, do you want to comment on this? I think there's a very important point here that Donald Trump is again presenting an existential challenge to the Democratic Party.
Keep in mind, Donald Trump is an extreme challenge to the world as well. The World Economic Forum, the global elites, and all of that. If you remember, after he was elected president, he actually told the UN, he was the first confronter. He went to the UN, confronted them, and said, "We reject your policy of globalism. We reject that." And that was a serious setback to the well, we'll say global elites, to the point where Agenda 21 was moved over to Agenda 2030. The people are standing up right now, and now you're actually seeing other world leaders emboldened. Yeah, all right, they're seeing them. It took a little while, but they're emboldened to say, hey, you people are screwing up the earth. You're ruining people's lives, all because you want your steaks and you want the rest of us to eat maggots.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I
Or
mean,
mealworms, excuse me.
well, I mean, John Kerry in his private jet, flying around, he wrecked Iran, and he came on the climate issue. I just continue to think it's a good thing he was never president, and I'm pleased to co-authored Unfit for Command with John O'Neill and expose this fraud in the Swiftboat days. But if this guy had been president, we would already be in hell.
And ketchup exports to China would go up.
Yeah, right. The Heinz family, who he's married into.
I loved her line to him during or around the 84 during the 84 campaign. It was not 84, excuse me, that's Mondale. Same thing, I guess. During the 04 campaign,
right,
when Kerry was running for president, it was said that when they were talking about all the actions and the Gary Hart stuff going, like that sort of thing going on in Washington, the Bill Clinton items, the wife said to him once, "If you cheat on me, I won't kill you. I'll just maim you."
Yeah, well, she probably would.
Yeah, I know. Just thought it was funny.
Yeah, I mean, she was a piece of work herself.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's go on to some more stories here. I want to cover several important stories. This Georgia judge yesterday finally issued a call for a hearing. It's a big story, actually, that this judge, Scott McCaffrey, scheduled a hearing for February 15th on this Fani Willis, who the allegations are, and I think made by one of the other defendants in the Trump case, that this her lover, Nathan Wade. So Fani Willis is the district attorney in Fulton County, Georgia. She's bringing a case against Donald Trump on this election that Donald Trump, lied and was saying that there was fraud and it was a legitimate election. And how dare Donald Trump ever say this is insurrection? Oh, okay, all that nonsense. Of course, Al Gore could object to the 2000 election and nobody said a word because he was a Democrat. So the Washington Post really broke the story that this judge issued an order for a hearing on her misconduct. And her misconduct is that her lover, Nathan Wade, she hired as a special prosecutor. She paid him $650,000, taxpayer money. Then they started taking luxury vacations on that money. So basically, and by the way, Nathan Wade is just getting divorced. So this is the, sex scandal, money stealing from the public, lavish vacations. What's the $650,000 for? Well, if the judge decides that she's committed misconduct and removes her from the case, this is going to be extremely damaging to the attempt to prosecute Donald Trump. And this Fani Williams gave a speech on Sunday at one of the famous churches in Georgia, where she said it was racism. She was being attacked for racism. She was making herself into a victim. Well, I think we're all sick of these people. This racist, everything's racist. Well, if everything's racist, nothing is racist. What is racist is critical theory because it demonizes white people. So for people of color, well, isn't white a color? I mean, I guess not to these people. So they're demonizing race again. They're race baiting, turning it around so that the whites are now, anybody white is now criminal and they want reparations. All this stuff is coming out. So this Fani Williams is probably going to be exposed. And if she is guilty of misconduct, she may face criminal charges, which should be the right outcome here. These prosecutors should be getting themselves the book thrown at them. Now, another story, which I think is also equally kind of important, and it has to do with the closing of these supermarkets around the country. The Democratic cities are hellholes. And so we're finding all across the country that these supermarkets are closing. I think the shocking one was that this Safeway in San Francisco, after 40 years, is closing its doors because there's just too much theft. If you take a look at Boston, for instance, Boston has been bleeding retailers in recent months. I'm reading out of Zero Hedge, with companies like Walgreens closing down 4 stores in the area in a single year. Residents and officials are outraged, arguing that these companies have a civic duty to stay and service communities in need. But it's estimated that the Massachusetts retailers are losing more than $2 billion a year because of criminal theft. And so what Zero Hedge is saying is maybe if the community stopped robbing them on a daily basis, these companies wouldn't feel the need to shut down. Well, that seems reasonable. How are you going to run a store when everybody comes in and just steals all the goods? Why bother having a store? And what's happening here is that these closures in Boston, it's happening in San Francisco, and the neighborhoods that are getting hit the hardest are the minority neighborhoods, because that's, again, where the theft is the highest. So, but yet the Democrats say crime is down. Well, the Democrats are saying crime is down because, first of all, the way the data is collected by the FBI during the COVID years, our actual results of crime are not being presented accurately. And then the lack of arrest because of these democratic cities where you've got these Soros district attorneys. The police don't make the arrests, and then there's no prosecution. And there's a constant release of repeat offenders into the blue cities. So the lack of arrests and convictions does not mean there's less crime. It means there's less law enforcement. And so therefore, reporting less crime means that they really should be reporting that there's more criminals at loose that the police are doing nothing about. So take San Francisco as an example. The police department closure rate on cases remains dismal because the city's district attorney refused to prosecute. For every 100 suspects arrested, 3 are charged and 1 is convicted. Well, then some of these DAs are being recalled. But again, Soros DAs are in Los Angeles, Chicago, Philadelphia, Austin, Dallas, San Antonio, St. Louis, New York, Baltimore, Albuquerque, Orlando, and 3 urban counties in Northern Virginia. In Massachusetts, the Soros-backed federal prosecutor Rachel Rollins was forced to resign after the Department of Justice Inspector General and the Office of Special Counsel released devastating reports outlining her serious ethical lapses and partisan political activity. Well, that shouldn't be a surprise. I mean, anytime you listen to these people, you find that they are outrageously biased and they've been brainwashed with this democratic nonsense. So the race issue has never been more, well, not saying never, but it's more polarized than it has been for years, because the critical race theory at its heart is a Marxist theory that just wants to destroy the United States by rubbing raw these tensions. And as I point out in this book on neo-Marxism, this goes back to the understanding that developed among the Communist Party of the United States of America in the 1930s, that race was the key pivotal issue that would divide America and destroy the country. And if you could just blame us as being slaveholders and country founded by a group of elite who wanted to preserve their rights as white supremacists, this is the Marxist argument about the founding of the United States, and it ignores completely the Civil War, which was not fought over slavery. It was fought over states' rights to begin with, the right of the states to secede from the Union. But by the end of the Civil War, especially after the Gettysburg Address, when President Lincoln read into the Constitution the Declaration of Independence, Gary Willis has done brilliant analysis of that, and said basically saying all people are created equal, and that again made a standard that Lincoln felt race was a major dividing issue, and he pressed to free the slaves. The 13th and 14th Amendments were both passed to eliminate slavery and to give blacks the right to vote. But of course, the 14th Amendment is now being used against President Trump because there's a clause in the 14th Amendment that says if you have guilty of an insurrection, then you cannot you can't have a federal office. You certainly can't be elected to a federal office. Well, the problem is, if Donald Trump being an insurrectionist, he was the president, he would be an insurrectionist against himself. And there's no insurrection called. The insurrection of the 14th Amendment was the Civil War. Now, the Lawfare takes that phrase and tries to bend it to apply it to Donald Trump, and at the same time ignores the obvious corruption of Joe Biden, the obvious dementia of Joe Biden. So this whole thing is ridiculous, because you've got Biden, who's basically demented, who doesn't know where he is half the time, and President Trump is on the ascendancy. They're trying to prosecute President Trump. This is insanity. It's why people feel such disarray. Now, again, as I point out in this book, this is not accidental. We had a defector from the Soviet Union named Bezmenov who came here and did a series of videos, and he said that the entire process of destroying a nation had been studied by the Soviet KGB, and it had a series of sequences to it where you demoralized people. You made it such that they were confused. and they didn't think they could solve the problem. Then you create a crisis, and the crisis is a point of change where people feel such fear, like a pandemic or the country breaking out in riots, like we had in 2020 with Black Lives Matter and Antifa destroying cities, or as we have today with these roving criminal mobs destroying cities. Bezmenov, and he said that essentially the power would then be granted to the state, which would never be relinquished. And that power would increase the ability of the KGB or any communist agency to put its policies into effect of collectivism. Collectivism means, we should make decisions not by individual freedoms, but for the collective good. So therefore, collective good is that we should stop a disease. So therefore, if it's the unvaccinated who are the problem because they carry the disease, we could force them to be vaccinated. Now, again, that's not an argument that's based on science fact. You've got to take the ideological nature of what's being done here is to construct a narrative in which people will give the government control. So you see it going on with the World Health Organization already preparing in Disease X to do their next taking of power, which they're ready to do by declaring even a regional outbreak of a disease could become defined as a global pandemic. And therefore, the World Health Organization will be running the world. This is a new series of amendments, a new treaty the World Health Organization wants enacted, and they're pressing to have that done in 2024. We've done a couple of shows on that. We had Dr. Kat Lindley, who did a whole interview with us on that subject. I've done one of the spaces on X on that subject. So again, we're seeing power grabs by the elite with these international organizations taking the lead. Now, if we go on to the international scene, and let's do that right now with a couple more stories. First of all, you're finding that the wars are expanding. So you've got Iran now having border fights, attacking militants and separatists in each other's countries with Pakistan. Each has attacked militants or rebels or these splinter groups. And again, from the point of view of international politics, you have to be basically an expert to understand even what's going on. Because these borders in countries like between Iran and Pakistan are often contested. And you get rebel groups or groups that want to take back territory from Iran, make it Pakistani, or from Pakistan, make it Iranian. People forget that from 1980 to 1988, Iraq and Iran were at war. That's almost gone from public memory. Yet it was a vicious war. Millions of people died. The Iranians sent the children into the minefields, and the children died and got blown up, and then the troops followed in. I mean, it's vicious war. And the fundamental conflict in the Middle East is between Sunni and Shiite Muslims. The Iranians are Shiites, and Saudi Arabia and most of the other countries are Sunni. And what do they fight about? The Shiites believe that the control of Islam should be only among the Prophet Muhammad's family, where the Sunnis believe that Islam should be ruled by civil government, like a caliphate, and they fight over this. And the Shiites believe that the Mahdi, who was one of the children who was of the Prophet's family, his lineage, went down this well. When he comes out of hiding, there will be a worldwide apocalypse, and Iran will be able to then come to the leadership of the world, certainly defeating Sunnis first. So the real conflict in the Middle East, even if Israel were destroyed, which Hamas wants to do, which Iran wants to do, said over and over again, destroying Israel. And I can remember through the years 2000, did my first book on Iran, 2000, I believe 5 or 6, which was Atomic Iran. I've been worried about this issue since then, because this conflict with Israel is just the first step to the ultimate battle between Sunni and Shiite Islam. And most people don't have a clue about this. Again, none of this is being taught in the schools right now. We're too busy trying to decide what a woman is. By the way, one of our Supreme Court justices cannot answer that question. When you get to this point of insanity, Bezmenov's stages are well in effect because we are in a point of being demoralized. And the truth is, we're winning because I think the vast majority of people are waking up to this insanity. We're saying we cannot have our cities be dominated by criminals. And the insanity extends through almost every aspect of what the Democrats are talking about. So we get now climate change. The EVs aren't working. In Chicago, EVs are like a junkyard because it's too cold this winter to heat up and to get an electric charge on one of these EVs. They have to be pre-charged before an EV can take a charge. So you've got to warm it up and then it can take an electric charge. When it's this cold, it doesn't work. And so you've got people waiting hours and hours and hours to get one of these charging stations. When they get to the charging station, may not work. And if it doesn't work, you're dead. The car is not going anywhere. You can't put gasoline in it and make it go anywhere. It doesn't take gasoline. Then they blow up and they have fires. There was a fire in London of a bus. When these electric vehicles have a fire, when these lithium batteries blow up, it's very hard to put the fires out because it can't be put out with water. They have to be put out with chemicals. And firefighters around the world are not equipped to handle electric batteries on these bikes or the cars or the buses blow up. And they just do it spontaneously. You put all this money into an electric vehicle and to buy it, it's expensive. Then it's cold, you can't refill it. Then it blows up. So don't recharge it in your garage because it may burn down the house. These are bad ideas. And by the way, the Democrats are now trying to explain how in this winter, which is extremely cold in certain parts of the country, not universally cold, because again, when we have this El Nino effect, which is the ocean currents warming currents coming up in the Pacific, it has a change in the weather patterns. So in the East, in New England, New York, New Jersey, it's been a relatively mild winter up till now, whereas the Midwest has been pounded and cold has gone all the way down to Dallas. And the current wave, much of the country is freezing. So they have to say, well, how can we have such cold when we've got global warming? Because this is a direct confrontation to the global warming crowd. Well, it's explained because climate change is summer, fall, winter, spring. And by the way, in the winter, it's cold. In the winter, it snows. Why? Because the Earth is tilted. Our axis around which we revolve is at an angle to the orbit around the sun. Therefore, we have winter, fall, 4 seasons, summer, fall, winter, spring. And that's the fundamental dynamic of Earth. And the sun is the major cause of heat and light, not carbon dioxide, which is 0.04% of the atmosphere. So I'm also seeing stories and following stories today where the solar panel companies that are installing these panels in California are now dying because California changed some of the subsidies and these panels are more expensive and people are not putting them on their homes. They don't get the same tax breaks. As soon as all the government money dries up, the solar and wind dry up too because they don't work. They're not economically feasible. They're ideologically driven. They're not practical technologies. Why? Sun doesn't shine all the time. We have night. And these are fundamental. Night is pretty simple to understand. The Earth is revolving, and when we're on the other side, away from the sun, it's dark. The other part of the world, it's light. The day starts in the Pacific, and much of the Pacific, including Australia, has had most of its day done when it's morning in New York. Now, again, These are concepts that we should be teaching in grade school, teaching geography. Instead, we're teaching gender uncertainty and trying to get these kids to go through sex change operations, which, by the way, some states are saying that if the child wants a sex change operation, the parents don't want them to have it, the state can take the child away from the parents and mutilate their bodies without the parents' consent, even down to very young children. Now, this is outrageous. It's also insane. So Soros says, well, the criminals are the victims because they're only criminals because of capitalism, because of the injustices, the social justice. We have to pity these criminals. We have to release them because it's society that's the problem. It's completely messed up. You can't have a society where the criminals run free because the psychopaths take over. I mean, these things should be fundamental to anyone who has the ability to think. It's like you don't put a pencil through your ear. It's a bad idea. And almost every one of the ideas the Democrats have right now are bad ideas. They don't work. And fundamental biblical principle is to judge an idea by whether it works or not. And these ideas don't work. So on Ukraine, one of the stories I posted today was that the only way Ukraine is going to be solved, and the war stopped, is if people realize that we've been lied to again about what the war has been about. The Biden administration, the State Department, has been determined since Hillary Clinton to expand NATO to the very edge of Russia. So the Democrats want to get Ukraine, they want to get Finland and Sweden into NATO. Now, what Putin has said consistently is that he does not want NATO brought to the edge of Russia any more than we would want Russia to put nuclear weapons in Cuba. That's what caused the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. Okay, now, but Biden is saying, well, if we don't stop Putin now, he's going to invade Ukraine, he's going to annihilate it, then he's going to invade NATO, and he's going to expand into Eastern Europe. That's been the argument that is behind this war, that we've got to stop Putin. Okay, now, Putin has repeatedly said that he did not intend to take over Ukraine, that he just wanted an agreement, which he actually sent to NATO, saying, just agree that you're not going to put Ukraine into the NATO deal. Okay, so and the Istanbul peace deal was all about getting this kind of an agreement done. And what Zelensky doesn't understand or refuses to understand is that had Putin gotten that deal, there would not have been an invasion. And the fundamental reality is Putin's taken the land that he's wanted. Now that he did invade, he's taken eastern Ukraine, which is largely Russian-speaking. He's taken much of the south of Ukraine on the Baltic, on the Black Sea, which gives him control of the Black Sea and access to the Atlantic through the Mediterranean. And the same with Finland and Sweden. This has been historically Russia's access to the Atlantic, either through the Baltic Sea or through the Black Sea. And what Zelensky is doing is perpetuating a fraud, because he's got money laundering. He's got the ability to get this huge amount of cash coming through, and the cash gets largely stolen. Pentagon can't account for trillions of dollars. And this is just completely messed up. I mean, you can't run a government or a world like this because these people have gone insane. And they're not thinking, these are the conditions that produce chaos. And the fundamental neo-Marxist reality is to get to their utopia, they have to destroy the current order to impose their new order. They promise their new order will be utopia. You won't have to work. You can have sex all the time. That's Marcuse, who's Frankfurt School philosopher, read widely during the 1960s, book Eros and Civilization, that fundamentally our sex drives are restrained because we're forced to work as slaves in capitalism. Therefore, in capitalism, combine Marx with Freud. Once capitalism is gone, then our true sexual nature can be expressed, and we have unlimited sexuality, which means you destroy the family. You destroy the family, you destroy one of the basic structures of society. Chris, why don't you weigh in on all this?
Well, you don't want to destroy any fabrics of society, yet that's exactly what the left needs to do to take over. But again, many of the old communist governments, which, by the way, have all virtually failed, or they needed to use forced compliance by their citizenry, maybe through imprisonment, military use, uh, have had to do so to break the fabric of society. They had to eliminate the past, they eliminate history. We're seeing that now, but more through manipulation and culture, where we have television programs that are dictating the ideas. Hey, you know what? These guys are bad. Tear down the statues. We have
Statue of Liberty, but
that's another one. That's ridiculous.
They want to tear down the Statue of Liberty.
Then there's another one. If it feels good, do it. What was the hippie thing back then? And you know, the great representation on television of hippies was Meathead. So that should tell you something as well. And Meathead's more of a meathead in real life when you follow his Twitter feed. That's a different story. The idea is you break the moral fabric of society. And I understand free thinkers can ask questions, but when it's government sponsored, culturally sponsored, there is obviously an agenda behind that, and of course, that is to break it down. Well, it's no secret America was built on the Judeo-Christian ethic, yet that's being denied right now. You're hearing people, well, look, we don't have an official religion. I understand that, but to say we weren't built on a Judeo-Christian ethic or to imply such things is a complete lie.
Well, human beings were built to follow certain laws and they're God's law. These laws that are being imposed on us are Satan's laws. I want to cover one more story. This Red Sea, I've been following very closely with these Houthi rebels or attacking shipping in the Red Sea. This is the expansion of the war from Israel and Gaza against Hamas. The war is really taking on dimensions where Lebanon is on the verge of having Hezbollah attack Israel. That's any day could happen. You could have Syria get involved in the war. And on the other side, at the tip of the Red Sea, going into India or China, these Houthi rebels are causing complete disruption of shipping, attacking these boats they have little boats and they come up and they try to hijack these large container ships, which are carrying goods from either China or India to Europe or vice versa, or the other route back from the Europe to India and China. Now, this is disrupting global supply chains, and it's making Chinese exports more expensive. Okay, so a container to Europe, which cost $3,000 to ship that container in December, today costs $7,000 because of the attack on shipping. Why? Because you've got to divert, instead of going through the Suez Canal, which takes to get to Singapore, it's about 8,500 nautical miles. It's a 25-day trip. You have to go around the southern tip of Africa. It's at now 11,800 nautical miles and a 36-day trip. So you've added about 3,000 miles and 10 days. That is a much more expensive way to get. The Suez Canal was built to solve this problem. And now with the chaos in the Middle East, we've got, I believe, two major aircraft carrier task forces in this area, in the Middle East right now. And we're attacking these Houthi rebels. We've been doing it for about a week. The war has expanded. And this whole region Iran and Pakistan now also having conflict. This whole region is in flames, and there's no way to easily solve this problem, because our Secretary of State and Biden is saying, well, we have to have a Palestinian state created in the Gaza. A Palestinian state today would be controlled not by the Palestinian Authority, but by Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization. It's a Sunni terrorist organization, but Iran funds it because Iran wants to destroy Israel. So Hamas is dedicated to the killing Jews and destroying Israel. You saw the October 7th attack, which 1,200 Jews were brutally massacred. And yet the world pressure is on Israel to stop cleaning Hamas out of Gaza, saying they're killing too many civilians. Well, the world was not up in arms with the Jewish civilians who were killed in a terrorist attack. Yet we see all through the United States and the world mass demonstrations for Hamas. And our universities, our students who are indoctrinated to hate America, then embrace Hamas. Well, Hamas, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so therefore, they have a union between radical Islam and neo-Marxism because both hate America. This, again, is insanity. And universities, I think, are going to struggle, increasingly struggle, because the anti-Semitism on universities has never been higher and more in the open. And by the way, unless you believe in this gender madness, unless you believe in intersectionality, which is a piling up of how many oppressions, if you're a woman, that counts for one. If you're a black woman, that counts for two. If you're a black woman, transgender, and women can be transgenders, now you got three. You think you had a past life, your sexuality is that of a cat, now you've got four. And that puts you higher up on the scale of discriminated against. It's schizophrenia. Your personal reality, which may be screwed up, has to be celebrated by someone, or you've suffered a microaggression. They have to use the correct pronouns. Well, as the middle class is being destroyed, people don't really care about what pronouns you're using. We've covered a lot of different things today, and what I can say is that as we started this program today with the Heritage Foundation telling the truth to the elite at Davos, they are the problem. And finally, I think Americans are waking up to this and want an end to this insanity. I think Donald Trump is going to have a massive support this time, maybe so massive that even if the Democrats try massive voter fraud, they will not get away with it. It'll be observed and seen, and people will be out looking for it this time around. There'll be a lot of discussion of it before the election occurs. Chris, any final comments as we wrap up?
I'm going to channel Don Rickles here, the great Don Rickles, and say perhaps the Davos elites' pronouns are hockey and puck.
There we go.
There we go. They're hockey pucks. That's it.
Well, that's, yeah, I get it.
I know. I like that though. I'm a Don Rickles guy. I had to stick him in there one of these days.
Well, there you go. Okay, let's wrap it up. And in the end, God always wins, and God is going to win here too. This world is ruled by God's laws, and they are, firm fundamental laws. These are not laws you can make up to be whatever you want them to be. These are destructive laws. These are destructive people. This neo-Marxism has to be defeated. The solution is really to return to 2 Chronicles 7:14.
Mm-hmm.
And in 7:14 it says, we need to get on our knees and ask God's forgiveness for letting this insanity get to this point. Millions of babies we've killed since Roe v. Wade, cutting them apart in the womb. The taking of God out of schools, out of our public squares, out of our lives. The judgment of God will be severe. And it's going to happen. But I don't think God created the human race to fail. So in the end, God wins. This is God's place. He can pull the plug anytime he wants to pull the plug. And if we're living through end days, there can be a time after that in which God's laws prevail. Thank you for joining us. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. We are broadcasting every day in weekdays, Monday through Friday, on thetruthcentral.com. And follow me on Substack, JeromeCorsiPhD.substack.com. On Twitter, it's at CorsiJerome1. Do get the free book. Look at our sponsors. We haven't emphasized it in this show, but again, if you like the show, support our sponsors. Please get the free book, which I've written on the coming global crisis right here, and an historic gold rush which will follow. And you can do that on the website. There's quite a bit on the website about how to get this free book. And the toll-free number at Swiss America is 1-800-519-6268. 1-800-519-6268. We've re-engineered the homepage. You can see up in the right-hand corner, the left-hand corner, all the social media that we're on. You can get to Substack directly there. You can get to the various books and buy them on the website. We have a lot more here going on than we did a few weeks ago. That's my Substack right there. Please subscribe. You can do free subscription or paid subscription. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. Thank you for joining us. God bless. We will be back on Monday.